Everything you've been taught about power, it's mostly a lie. You were told kindness is strength, fairness wins respect, and people will reward you for being good. But look at history, and it tells a very different story. The most powerful people, the rulers, emperors, CEOs, they don't play by those rules. They follow a harsher, unwritten law. Fear is power. Weakness is death. Imagine a world where mercy is a fatal mistake, where 1 second of hesitation could cost you everything. This isn't some abstract theory, it's reality. That's why ruthless conquerors changed history, while kind-hearted leaders were betrayed, overthrown, or just forgotten. Nobody understood this harsh truth better than Niccolò Machiavelli, back in the 16th century. Machiavelli wrote a book so bold, so unapologetically ruthless, that the Vatican banned it. It was called The Prince, a guide on how to grab power and never lose it. In it, Machiavelli dropped a terrifying truth. The world doesn't reward kindness, it rewards power. It's 1513, and a man is sitting in exile, stripped of political influence, abandoned by those he once served. But instead of begging for mercy, he does something extraordinary. He writes, not a plea or a confession, but a blueprint for power. This blueprint has been followed by dictators, kings, and politicians ever since, because Machiavelli knew one thing: if you want to survive in a world ruled by power, you must be feared, not loved. Feared. That's the truth nobody wants to admit. But what if he was right? What if everything you believe about morality, fairness, and leadership is actually making you weak? Stick with me, because after hearing what Machiavelli uncovered, you'll never look at power the same way again. The world isn't fair. That's not just cynicism, it's fact. We've been told being good leads to power, that if you're kind, just, and fair, the world will reward you. But history shows something else entirely. Goodness doesn't grant power, strength does. Those who wait for power to be handed to them, they never get it. They're used, manipulated, and tossed aside by those who actually take power. And if you don't understand this, you're at the mercy of those who do. Need proof? Look at King Louis XVI of France. He wasn't a tyrant, he wasn't ruthless, he believed in fairness and compromise. And where did that land him? At the guillotine. Louis tried to be a king for the people, making concessions, softening harsh laws, trying to share power. But in a revolution, weakness is a death sentence. People didn't respect Louis for his kindness, they saw it as weakness. Machiavelli would have predicted Louis's fall right from the start. In The Prince, he writes that a ruler who is too merciful invites chaos, while one who is feared keeps order. History repeats this lesson over and over. Leaders who hesitate, who show mercy at the wrong moment, are the first to go. So why do people respect fear more than love? Most want to believe love wins, that people will follow a leader who treats them well. But human nature doesn't work that way. People instinctively respect strength. Psychology shows that when we see someone as dominant, we defer to them without even thinking. Fear creates control and predictability to things the brain craves. That's why, even in everyday life, the ruthless rise. Think about the CEO who fires half the staff to save a company feared but respected. The politician who crushes opponents hated but still in power. The school bully not liked but obeyed. It's not about being good or bad. It's survival. Machiavelli famously said, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you must choose." But what did he really mean? He wasn't telling rulers to be tyrants just for the sake of cruelty. He was revealing a hard truth. Love is conditional, but fear is reliable. People love you as long as you benefit them. The moment you stop, that love disappears. Fear, on the other hand, guarantees obedience even if people don't like you. Leaders who are only loved eventually get betrayed. Leaders who are feared are obeyed, even by those who hate them. Take history's examples. Two kinds of leaders emerge: the prince who is ruthless, strategic, and feared, and the fool who's kind-hearted, trusting, and weak. The prince survives and shapes history. The fool gets overthrown, killed, or forgotten. Look at Julius Caesar, loved by the people, but too trusting. He forgave enemies who literally stabbed him 23 times. Now, compare that with Augustus. His successor didn't make the same mistake. He eliminated enemies, crushed rebellions, and ruled for decades. Caesar's love made him vulnerable. Augustus's fear made him invincible. This isn't just the past, it's happening today. The top CEOs and politicians, they don't win by playing nice. Steve Jobs wasn't loved. He was feared, firing people without blinking, crushing competitors, demanding perfection. People hated working with him, but he built Apple into a trillion-dollar empire. Vladimir Putin rules with an iron fist. He cuts down threats before they gain strength, making sure no opposition challenges him. Elon Musk has fired entire departments overnight, ignored public backlash, and dominated multiple industries. People may hate him, but they fear and respect his power. This is Machiavelli's law in action. And now, here's the toughest part. Machiavelli despised mercy. He saw it as a trap. Mercy doesn't protect you, it exposes you to betrayal. The moment you show weakness, your enemies will strike. He wrote that a prince who pardons enemies ensures his own downfall. Take Mikhail Gorbachev, the last leader of the Soviet Union. He believed in compromise and gave his enemies freedom, trusting they'd be fair. What happened? His enemies used that freedom to overthrow him. To compare that with Joseph Stalin, he eliminated threats early, ruled with an iron fist, and stayed in power for decades. Ruthless, absolutely. Effective, definitely. Never give your enemies a chance to strike. That's the lesson. Now you see why fear is stronger than love, why power is taken, not given, and why mercy can be deadly. But this is just the beginning. Wait until I tell you. Machiavelli's most dangerous secret, the rule so ruthless it decides who rules and who is ruled. Let's dig even deeper into Machiavelli's ruthless playbook, because there's another brutal law that separates those who rule from those who end up forgotten. Fear alone isn't enough. If it's about control, a lot of people mix up fear and cruelty. They think if you want to be feared, you need to be some kind of monster. Machiavelli disagreed. For him, the smartest rulers aren't needlessly cruel, they're in control. It's not about being hated. In fact, a hated ruler is always in danger. The real trick is walking that tightrope, being feared enough to command respect, but not so hated that people rise up against you. Why does this matter? Because hatred builds rebels, but fear, when measured carefully, creates stability. You want people to worry about the cost of betrayal, not wish for your downfall every single day. So how do powerful leaders find this balance? It's all about decisive action, not mindless punishment. If someone betrays you, don't just move on, make an example of them. Make it crystal clear. Betrayal equals consequences. But don't become erratic with cruelty, or you'll unite everyone against you. Predictable rewards, unpredictable punishments. Machiavelli's advice was to be predictable in your rewards. Everyone should know that good behavior is recognized. But when it comes to punishment, that's where you keep people guessing. If there's one thing that keeps people loyal, it's knowing that stepping out of line could have consequences no one saw coming. Here's the point. People follow rulers who create prosperity and safety, even if those rulers are feared. If your leadership makes life good for your followers, why would they rebel? Even if they don't love you, they'll respect you. Genghis Khan, the blueprint for balanced power. Take Genghis Khan, one of history's most infamous conquerors. He inspired terror across continents. Entire cities would surrender just hearing he was on the way. But this is key, his own people didn't hate him. They respected him because he rewarded loyalty and skill, not just bloodlines. He promoted people based on ability, not family ties. He eliminated rebellion instantly, crushing threats before they began. For those who were loyal, he made life better, safer trade, prosperity, opportunities for advancement. Genghis Khan's enemies feared him, but his people respected him. That's the art. Cultivate fear in enemies, stability with followers. The fatal mistake, hesitation. You can't talk about power without mentioning speed. Most leaders who lose everything make one fatal error. They hesitate. They see a threat, but they wait. They hope kindness will change things. And by the time they act, it's too late. The threat has grown, and now it's a full-blown crisis. Machiavelli hammered this point. Power isn't about kindness, it's about decisiveness. He who wishes to be obeyed must know how to command. He's full of examples. Julius Caesar, he didn't take out his enemies when warned, thinking his popularity would protect him. Instead, he got stabbed 23 times in the Senate. Vladimir Lenin, when he took power, he made sure to eliminate threats immediately. He crushed opposition before it could organize. No hesitation. Machiavelli would have called Lenin a true master of power, and his method worked a Soviet state that lasted decades. Mercy to enemies, a trap. There's one Machiavellian rule you can't ignore. Never let traitors walk away. Make an example out of them, or you invite more betrayal. Mercy is dangerous. With the wrong people, check out King Richard II of England. When facing his rival Henry Bolingbroke, Richard exiled him instead of executing him. Seemed merciful, right? But Bolingbroke came back years later, raised an army, deposed Richard, and sent him to his death. That's the price of misguided mercy. On the flip side, Joseph Stalin didn't wait for his rivals to move. He eliminated them before they even tried. Was it ethical? No. But was it effective? Undeniably so. Decades in power, no real rivals. Left out why most leaders fail. People fail at power for a simple reason. They hesitate. They want to be liked, to be the nice leader. But weakness invites destruction. Machiavelli spelled it out. It's much safer to be feared than loved when you can't be both. Hesitation is fatal. Speed is deadly. Unleash ruthlessness at the right moment. Here's why the best leaders succeed. They act before their enemies even know what's going on. Look at Napoleon Bonaparte. The man won battles not just through strategy, but because he was unpredictable. He moved his armies faster than anyone expected, attacked before others could organize, and always kept his opponents off balance. That's exactly why he became the most feared man in Europe. Now that you understand the art of fear and why waiting to remove threats is the quickest path to disaster, there's still more. Next, we'll dive into Machiavelli's final, most dangerous lesson. Power isn't just about what you do, it's about perception. Now that we've explored how fear works, why mercy can be deadly, and the necessity of decisiveness, let's move to perhaps the darkest and most cunning lesson from Machiavelli. Power is as much about perception as it is about reality. The most powerful leaders in history didn't just command armies or control wealth, they mastered the art of how others see them. They controlled the image others had of their strength and intentions. Because in the game of power, appearance is everything. If a leader is actually strong but looks weak, that leader becomes a target. Conversely, even if deeply hated, a leader who appears beloved can maintain control because no one dares to rise against them openly. The difference between a king and a pawn isn't just physical power, but how others perceive that power. Machiavelli was brutally aware of this, advising rulers to mask their true intentions and never be completely honest. Why? Because the moment people see your real plans, they can prepare to stop you. Think about it. If you announce your moves in advance, your enemies and rivals can oppose you before you make your move. Instead, Machiavelli urges leaders to project an image of humility, kindness, or weakness, whatever keeps others off guard, while quietly planning their next decisive strike. This is the heart of Machiavellian strategy. Deception is not a choice, it is a necessity. One of history's greatest practitioners of this was Julius Caesar. His enemies underestimated him because he acted loyal to the Roman Republic, all while quietly building an army and consolidating power. When he crossed the Rubicon River, he took Rome in a single, unstoppable move. By then, his enemies weren't just surprised, they were powerless. The illusion of weakness was his greatest weapon. Machiavelli famously said, "A ruler must be like a lion and a fox. The lion's strength crushes enemies, but it is predictable and vulnerable to traps. The fox is cunning and clever, able to avoid danger, but it lacks physical power. The perfect leader is both, strong enough to overpower opponents, but smart enough to avoid their traps." This balance of power and guile is essential because arguably the most dangerous trap in politics is trust. Machiavelli warned not to trust blindly. The person smiling at you today is often plotting to stab you tomorrow. Loyalty is a facade, friendship is temporary, and trust is a weakness. Julius Caesar illustrates this deadly lesson he trusted Brutus, a man he treated like a son, but Brutus was the one who delivered the final stab. Machiavelli would never have made that mistake, because he understood that enemies are predictable. But friends can betray you when you least expect it, so the rule is clear. If you must trust, maintain leverage over those you trust. Keep your enemies guessing and your allies wary. If people believe you are harmless, they drop their guard. That's your opportunity. If they think you're weak, they'll try to take advantage. This interplay of perception and reality shapes how power works. It's a game of appearances as much as actions. Here's another historical example. Napoleon Bonaparte. Before rising to emperor, he was just an ordinary officer, underestimated by almost everyone. While others celebrated their victories, Napoleon planned quietly, letting others underestimate him until he struck with overwhelming force. His power was as much about controlling how others saw him as about his military might. And another crucial point Machiavelli made: when you strike, do it completely. If you remove an enemy, leave no chance for revenge. When you seize power, make it clear there's no doubt who's in control. Half-hearted moves only invite disaster. This brings us to the most brutal truth about power. It isn't about good or evil. It's about control. The strong act before their enemies move, while the weak hesitate and get destroyed. Reality doesn't matter nearly as much as what people believe matters. Machiavelli never saw the world as black and white, good versus evil, but as a relentless game where only the strong survive. The world is not kind. It never was. So now it's your choice. Will you control power, or will it control you? Power is a game. Now you know the rules. But here's the hardest question. If you could use these laws, would you? Would you embrace Machiavelli's ruthless strategies, even if it cost you everything? Or would you refuse, knowing it might mean losing it all? History doesn't celebrate the kind, it remembers the victorious. So tell me, if you had to pick, would you rather be feared or loved? Drop your answer in the comments below. If this insight shook you, could that means you're starting to see power for what it really is? And if you want more deep dives into power, psychology, and the brutal truths no one talks about, hit subscribe, because here, knowledge isn't just power, it's survival. Now that you've got a solid grasp of how perception and deception drive power, let's explore another crucial aspect: ruthless removal of threats before they can take root. One of Machiavelli's core ideas is that timing and decisiveness are everything when it comes to maintaining power. Hesitation is fatal. Most leaders lose their grip not because they lack strength, but because they don't act fast enough. They see danger, but hope it will pass. They show mercy at the wrong time, or let enemies linger, and those small threats, they grow, multiply, and eventually destroy everything. Take Julius Caesar again. Despite warnings, he ignored the brewing resentment among certain senators. He believed his popularity made him untouchable, so he dismissed the danger. On the infamous Ides of March, those same senators stabbed him 23 times. His failure to act early was his undoing. Contrast this with Vladimir Lenin after the Russian Revolution. Upon gaining power, Lenin wasted no time. He crushed opposition, silenced dissent, and eliminated potential rivals before they were strong enough to organize. His swift, ruthless actions laid the foundation for a Soviet state that endured for decades. Machiavelli would call Lenin a true master of power. The lesson: when dealing with traitors or enemies, crush them immediately, or they will become your downfall later. Machiavelli cautioned that mercy to defeated foes is a trap. It gives them time to regroup, gain strength, and strike back. King Richard II of England made exactly this mistake. By exiling his rival Henry Bolingbroke, instead of executing him, Richard thought he was showing mercy. Instead, Bolingbroke came back, assembled an army, deposed Richard, and executed him. A fatal lesson in misplaced kindness. And then there's Joseph Stalin, notorious for purging his opposition before rivals could challenge him. He ruled with an iron fist, uncompromising and decisive, ensuring his power remained unchallenged for decades. While his tactics were brutal and ethically questionable, there's no denying their effectiveness. The brutal truth: power rewards ruthlessness, not hesitation. But it's not just about eliminating threats, it's about knowing when and how to act. Machiavelli told leaders to be both feared and respected, avoiding extremes. Be too cruel, and you unite enemies against you. Be too kind, and you invite exploitation. The sweet spot is a balance: severe punishment for betrayal, but fair rewards for loyalty. Another key to maintaining power is unpredictability, especially in how you respond to threats. Punish betrayals harshly and without warning, but reward loyalty in expected ways. This combination keeps people loyal out of rational fear, not out of hatred or resentment. This brings us back around to stability. The people under your rule will accept, even if they fear you, if their lives are stable, prosperous, and protected. Fear becomes a useful tool to prevent rebellion, but it works best when paired with tangible benefits to the rule. Fast, precise, and balanced use of power is the mark of a successful ruler. Napoleon Bonaparte exemplified this. His success was not only due to military genius, but because he was completely unpredictably, always moving faster and striking sooner than his enemies expected. No hesitation, no second guessing. He forced his opponents to constantly react to his moves. This ruthless decisiveness is why Napoleon became one of the most feared leaders in European history, commanding not just armies but also the perception of unstoppable power. So, in summary, remove threats early before they grow. Act decisively. Hesitation kills. Balance punishment and reward. Be unpredictable in your punishments but consistent in your rewards. Maintain stability and prosperity to keep loyalty. Use fear as a tool, not as a weapon of hatred. These lessons aren't just abstract ideas, they're strategies proven by history's most effective rulers. Their success came from understanding that kindness doesn't protect power and that hesitation invites destruction. Here we are at the final and perhaps most challenging part of Machiavelli's lessons on power, mastering the illusion of power itself. Because at its core, power isn't just about raw strength or decisive action, it's about controlling the narrative, shaping appearances, and bending reality to your advantage. Great rulers don't just strike fear or crush enemies, they shape how others perceive them. Why? Because perception creates reality. If your people believe you are strong, stable, and in control, they won't question your authority if behind the scenes things are uncertain. If your enemies believe you're invincible, they hesitate. If your followers believe you're just and fair, or at least that you bring prosperity, they'll tolerate even your harshest actions. Machiavelli understood this brilliantly. He knew that humans are easily deceived, swayed more by appearances, rumors, and symbolism than by facts. A wise leader uses that to their advantage, never revealing their true intentions or full strength. One of the greatest masters of illusion was Julius Caesar. He carefully concealed his real ambitions, appearing weak and loyal, while amassing an army and waiting for the right moment. When he crossed the Rubicon River, his enemies had no idea what was coming, and by then, it was too late. This is the essence of Machiavellian strategy. Deception is not optional, it's necessary. Machiavelli advised rulers to be both a lion and a fox. The lion represents raw power, able to destroy enemies. The fox symbolizes cunning and the ability to avoid traps. The perfect ruler is strong enough to dominate physically, but smart enough to outwit others. Trust is another dangerous game here. Machiavelli emphasized that never trusting blindly is vital. A friend or ally may smile today and betray you tomorrow. Loyalty is fragile and often temporary. That's why a ruler must always keep leverage against everyone, even those closest. Again, Julius Caesar's story is a perfect example. Trusted Brutus as a son, only to be betrayed and assassinated by him. Machiavelli would have never made that mistake. Knowing enemies are easier to predict than friends. If you want to hold power, you need to master appearances, know when and whom to trust, and be ruthlessly honest with yourself about human nature. Another tip Machiavelli gave: never announce your plans. Let others think you're humble and weak, then strike when they're least expecting it. Control the narrative so well that by the time your power shows itself, it feels inevitable and unstoppable. Napoleon Bonaparte again illustrates this. Before becoming emperor, he was underestimated. But while his rivals celebrated victories and exposed their strengths, Napoleon planned quietly, waiting for the perfect moment to strike with overwhelming force. Machiavelli's final piece of advice: when you act, strike completely. Remove any chance of revenge, doubt, or rebellion. Half measures and hesitation only invite downfall. So, to sum up the whole brutal truth of power, power isn't about being good or evil. It's about control. The world rewards the strong who act before their enemies. Kindness is often a liability. Mercy can be fatal. Fear, wielded carefully, ensures obedience. Decisiveness and swift removal of threats prevent destruction. Balancing punishment and reward keeps loyalty without generating rebellion. Perception shapes reality. Control appearances to control power. Deception is necessary. Never trust blindly. Strike hard and strike completely. Machiavelli didn't sugarcoat the world. He described it how it is, not how we wish it to be. And in that ruthless game, only the strong survive. Now, the real question: will you master these rules and control power, or will you let it control you? History rarely remembers the kind or the gentle, it remembers those who win. So, what's your choice? Would you rather be feared or loved? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this exposed truth about power resonated with you, don't forget to hit subscribe for more deep dives on power, psychology, and the hard realities no one else wants to talk about. Remember, in this world, knowledge isn't just power, it's survival. Thanks for watching.